Alright, hey everybody, let's get started. First off, let me just say, please let me know if the audio volume balance is not perfect, because for some reason my settings got a little preset. That looks like a little too loud, huh? But anyway, I'll probably be fiddling with it while we're streaming. And I hope everybody's had a great Wednesday. I hope everyone's Labor Day weekend was great. Okay, there we go. It took OBS a while to capture my screen, but looks fine now. Okay, so last time we were working on end of turn effects, and we had to take a little bit of a detour into the Lua code because it was being a little strange. Let's see. Down here where we use the equals equals, Lua was not resolving this correctly, and basically even if the board positions had the same values here, it was still saying that the positions weren't equal. So then I was going to go and write my own equals function for the board position, which I did here, except I was using the operator, and for some reason Moonsharp does not like it if you override the operator. It actually crashes Unity, so I'm not exactly sure what the deal is with that, but luckily for us, Moonsharp will resolve the equality operator here to use this equals function. So it actually works perfectly now. I think we ended the stream on that, and I have done a little research since then and found out that's the case. And so now if we move this character here, which just happens to be position 232, so it'll move, and then the end of turn effects will trigger, and it will check all the monsters and see if any monster is in this position, and then it'll have it move one back, and that's what happened there. So the equality is working now, and if actually I don't think the game will let me do another turn. We haven't got that far yet, but if I tell the gold piece to move here, then the end of turn effect should not trigger, which it doesn't. So yeah, that's perfect. So now we fix this, and we know that they generate actions and that the actions execute. So basically we're done with that. So there's one other thing we want to do before we have been able to execute one turn completely, and that's we want to add some more anti-cheat to the status phase, and then we want to try to run 2 turns and see if there's any problems there, which I think that I remember that there was one, but anyway, we'll get to that soon. So what I mean by spoof anti-cheat is like we did, let me try and find the object. It's just like we did in the the choice, where is it? Error checker. So basically we want to make sure that the server is not changing our selection, and that is going to be pretty easy to find out. Unlike, see, this one is actually pretty complicated because, yeah, we might not have selected something this turn, in which case we need to make sure that we just trust the server because we don't know. That would happen if we got disconnected and are trying to reconnect to the server. But then if we did submit something this turn, then we need to check to make sure that since selections that the local client contains is expecting. Yeah, so what happens here is if a player that we control the server sends our selections back and it's not what we're expecting, then that means that the server is tampering, so we throw an error. And then of course, if some selections we were expecting did not come back on the server message, that's also the server is sending wrong values out to other players. So we just want to bail out of this because obviously there's either a problem or a cheat somewhere. So we want to do something similar for the status phase, and it's been a long time since we have worked on this code, and basically the status phase of the game happens after the after turn effects, and it basically just sees which monsters are alive, which players are still in the running to win, and then if any player has one. So we just have to look here for the error checker. And it's going to be pretty simple. Okay, so what do we do here? We basically just trust the server. Yeah, so we have to trust the server on the win state because the server is the only one that knows the state of all the players. Oh wait, how does this work actually? So first it checks to make sure that there's not a mismatch in length. Oh, it doesn't even throw errors, does it? Okay, yeah, this is actually pretty primitive yet. Or primitive at this point. Okay, so on the next update we want to try catch play exception, and then if one is thrown, then we'll just send it along. Okay, and this changes to message claim with a play exception argument. Send this if no errors are thrown anywhere in this function. And we can simplify this now to combo active equals that we're in the arrow check phase. Yeah, this doesn't have a tag anymore. Alright. Okay, so let's look through here. So if there's... So this would be something like status message corrupted. So instead of returning, we'll just throw new play exception. Have anything here, so status message corrupted. And yeah, this shouldn't even have a return value anymore. We actually might not need to do anything here because, let's see. We might already do sufficient error checking because we basically need to make sure that all the monsters match here. Okay, I see. So it just takes the first status message. So actually what we need to do is loop through all the status messages and make sure that they're equal. And then we can just take this first one and check to make sure that it matches the local state. Which I think should be fine. So actually, yeah, the win state. I'm actually wondering if we even need to send all this stuff to the server, because every player already has all this information. I guess I do it now to make sure everything is still synchronized, but that might not be needed. I guess we already have all this work done. So really we could pretty much just send the win state, I think. Actually, so I'm trying to think if there's any way that some of this information might not be known by the other players. I guess actually the other players might not know if a monster is actually dead or not, if the health stat is hidden. That's interesting. Okay, so maybe we do need to send all this information actually. Let's see, where do status finalizer is what actually sends the information to the server. So yeah, it has an array of the monsters, and I think it says if a monster is alive or dead. And then it does the same for the players. The player status is not really needed because the player is basically just, if it has any monsters on the board, the player is not, quote, dead. And what is this decided? Tested, we know. Oh, here, status updater. Okay, this is what actually sets things being alive and dead. So I think, yeah, this player alive is... I kind of have trouble with this pretty often, because all it really does... I mean, it depends only on if it has any monsters available for use. So I think it's basically just kind of a shorthand to see if a player is active without having to check all of its monsters. But since it's like a derived value, it might be better. Yeah, just not to even have it, because we won't have to worry about keeping it synchronized. It's used a couple places, but I mean, we could always change this to just be a method in player, or if we don't want to do that, query. I'm trying to think of any time that a player alive status would change that's not dependent on the monster status. Like, is there any way that a player could still be alive but have no monsters? Or vice versa, a player could be, quote, dead but still have monsters on the board. I think that's a no to each. So I think to simplify things, I'll just go ahead and get rid of it. Okay, so I think, yeah, the end of turn status message, we'll need to include this information. Basically the monster status. Well, he doesn't need to include the win state and the winning player, actually. But I guess that's one way. So, because these should always be equal for every player, unless there's an error. But if we want to check for error, there's probably a better way, such as sending like a hash of the map state at the end of every turn to make sure everything is synchronized. So yeah, because since the win state and the winning player are, every player can determine it just based on the monster status. That means this information is not needed, as far as I can tell. Where's the status updater? Right. Closed by accident. So the winning player is just the last player that's alive, and then if there's no player alive, then that means that it's a tie. Probably should have just counted the number of players alive instead of having this kind of awkward variable. There we go. Go ahead and do that. So yeah, we'll need to change this because we're going to get rid of this variable. Okay, I see how it works. This code is a little awkward, isn't it? So all we'll do is just, we'll make this easier. Num alive and alive player equals P. And just by definition, if this is 1, then the alive player will always hold the winning player. I mean, that doesn't really need to be stored here either. But I guess no harm done. So switch I'm alive. If 0, then the battle win state is a tie, because that means that all players died this turn. If it's 1, then the win state I guess it really shouldn't be win, it should be, because it could actually be a loss if you're not the player that won, but. And then the last, if any other number, the win state is still contested. Okay, so that's a lot simpler, I don't know. Must have been tired when I wrote that code before. Okay, so get rid of this. It's no time like the present. So that's gonna cause quite a few errors. So it looks like The only time that this alive variable is actually used, besides in these status updaters, which might not need anymore because we're not going to send that information to the server, is here in the choice action collector. Collector. But I know that this will probably be used other times, so. Oh, I deleted the alive and monster. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to delete it in the player. So here, so really the alive just means it needs to loop through every monster that the player owns and look if any monster there is alive. So I mean it's an easy function, but it'll be a little annoying to have to continually call it, or to have to rewrite it in a bunch of places. So I guess I should be good and make a query for that. Okay, so player alive query. And this will just need auto controller. Actually private. So private bool is player alive. And now do I want the index or do I want the player object? Probably the index. Just need the current battle state to be able to find this out. So battle equals controller, get component. And then we'll also want to register our callback, or query, I mean. So it returns a boolean and it accepts a player index, which is an integer. And we just send it as player alive. So now when everyone calls this query, it will forward them to this function. I guess I'll do it for each, it's a little easier. And battle players player index dot team, and then if battle monsters and dot alive, then we'll want to return true, and then if we get through the loop without this ever firing, then we know that the player is not alive. So pretty simple. That open. Looking for the map controller so that I can create a function right here, or the object I should say. Alright, so now all we have to do is here we need to get a reference to the query, and it returns a bool. And just say use query. Oh, you know what? I definitely need to assign this a tag. Yeah, map. Because this type signature is not that unique. No way. Unfortunately, I already closed that object, didn't I? Tag goes first. Okay, and then we just call is player alive right here. So there we go, that fixes that problem, and I'll go ahead and copy this because we'll probably need it at least. Actually, I don't know if we'll need it, but it's easy enough to get again. So this battle data creator, I don't have to set this anymore. So I'll just, since I already have this open, we don't even need this function at all. Okay, that's what I just fixed. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna come back and fix all this stuff. What is the status? This is where we send that information to the server, which we don't have to do anymore. Okay, so check for player loss. This is the status updater, is it? Yeah. Okay, so what we'll need to do yeah, we'll have to have like an array, probably. Well, no, we don't. We just need to call the isPlayerAlive right here. Okay, and then just isPlayerAlive send p. And then we'll count it and store that, and so I don't think we even need this function either. So this fresh, I'll call it here actually. We can simplify this. I'm not sure why sometimes I decide to call it right away. I think it's cleaner and less prone to bugs if I wait until the next frame. Okay, so this is all up to date. So in a turn status, I still, okay, so I think I can just get rid of these. I already explained why, because they only depend on the monster status and every player can figure it out themselves. Although that is interesting, because okay, yeah, because a monster might actually die that we don't know about, which would affect the win state. So that means the win state needs to, like, this status updater needs to actually go after we receive the message from the server and have checked it. Okay. Because right now we update, but really we should submit all the monster statuses now, or first, and then we get everything from the server. We'll do an error check, then we'll do an update, and then there'll be one last ready check, and then the game will just either go to the results screen or go to the next turn at the end. So yeah, we'll need to update the way that works, but okay, so yeah, let's just start at the beginning. So submit to server phase is the status finalizer. Okay, and the monster alive, well, we don't deal with damage yet, but I guess yeah, this needs to be separate because like the alive is dependent on a certain statistic, which will be set in the mods. But since we might not know that statistic, we can't like... I guess we could... Oh, but no, it's a little more complicated than that because a monster... Take for example, if a monster had an ability that let it... like, I guess, stay alive for one more turn even though its health is at 0. So we don't... Yeah, basically we need to just let mods take care of setting this alive flag. Yeah, so I'll just leave it separate. We won't do anything fancy. So yeah, this is fine. But yeah, we're not going to send this yet because, well, now we don't even know that at this point. Wish there was an easy way to print out the status of all the monsters, but so we'll just comment that out for now. Okay, so yeah, now this message is pretty simple. All we do is just send the alive status of all the monsters. So after that, it will go... Maybe I should update the status phase manager while I'm thinking about it. So status updated, so yeah, basically this will just need to be shuffled around. Goes after validated now. Of course that didn't do anything, but just to try and keep things a little simple. Or... yeah, in order that they'll be called. Okay, so start. So I guess I should switch this to start send. And I'll need to change this function actually now, because update will need to go down here. So this should change to submit to server. Okay, and this is still fine, but after the update, it moves to final wait. So it's a little more complicated than that, isn't it? Okay, I'll just move this down for now. So after submit to server, yeah, we did as a ready check, and then it goes to request. And yeah, on receive it goes to error check. Okay, so this is the part we need to switch. So I don't need that anymore. Basically, this needs to go down here now. So after error check, we switch to update, and after update, if we're connected, or if we're not connected, that's why I switched to not using those. This is easier to see. And so if connected as false, we move to final wait, which means we just wait to be reconnected. But if we are connected, we go to final check, which is just that last ready check. So that is all good. Yeah, we just shuffled around some things. Okay, so... Okay, so I guess I should check... Or that was the status finalizer, I already updated that. So next is... request from the server. This should not really be any different. So that's good. And then the receiver, we just get the message and store it right there. So yeah, next is error check, which we know we have to do some work. so yeah, there's no more player status. Okay, so yeah, this monster status. Okay, I guess the first thing we should do is, like I said, how we got down this rabbit hole, is we need to make sure that any messages that the server sends that we are responsible for, we need to make sure that they're actually true. Which, since we don't send one message per player, it's just per client, so there should be one and only one that we send. Okay, so that makes it easy. And then what else could happen? I guess the player or the server could send more than one message for a specific player, which well, yeah, that could cause problems, I guess. But really, for the other players, we pretty much have to trust them. I guess we could maybe do some anti-cheat, like if the server sends back that one creature has been resurrected that we know shouldn't be able to, then we could say, oh, he's cheating. But that's probably getting ahead of ourselves. So the only other thing that could happen is that if a player says a monster is dead that they don't control, well, no, that's not necessarily true. That could be okay. The problem comes if there's disagreements. So how would we do this? Maybe players should only send monster statuses for monsters that they actually know are alive or dead. And then there can be like a third unknown, which in the game logic basically treats that monster as being alive. But for the purposes of this anti-cheat check at the end, if a monster status is unknown, then it won't try to, then I'll just defer to somebody that does know. Okay, so let's, where is that status finalizer? And I have to do that because I was going to, at this part, I was just going to check to make sure that everybody's alive status for every monster was equal, but that won't really work because if the one player knows a monster's dead because it's the only one that knows that monster's health stat, then it would obviously disagree with everyone else who just defaulted to knowing that monster, to thinking that monster is alive, but we'd actually want to trust the player that said it was dead. So yeah, I think that's what we'll have to do. But at the same time, we don't want to just blindly trust every player because they could say all your monsters are dead, except if it's a monster that you actually know the status of, you could say no, you're wrong, and then that would cause an error. So I guess, yeah, we will need to have a Lua script for that, I think. That will give us a monster's alive status. Alright, well, we don't need a separate Lua script, it's just whenever the live status is set, we'll just remember it. Okay, so that's what I need to do. I just need to have, instead of just a boolean for alive, it needs to be an enumeration, I guess, because it has one other state. file just for that. I don't even know, is this used? Oh, it's in this knowable value, which we don't actually use anymore. I'll leave them around. So basically, we just need another enumeration. I guess I'll make another file for it. Okay, so this will be live status. Unknown will be default. Oh right, and then I have to tell C# that's an enumeration. And then alive status. Switch to the monster. Okay, so that's gonna cause a lot of errors now. So it's not as much as I thought. Okay, so save monster. How do I want to store it in the save monster? I guess it can still be the enumeration. Guess that fixes that. Okay, so right now this is a Boolean. Okay, so yeah, Lua will never need to set the alive status to unknown. It either only set it to alive or dead. So I can have a Boolean here. So it'll be alive basically if the alive status is not dead. Same thing here. I see weed drag. Can you gather feedback on your animal dating simulator? Well, I can't play it on stream right now. Well, that would not increase my chances of playing it, but you do you. Same here, as long as it's not dead. Okay, and this is what we need to fix. Okay, so now we can just do a switch here. So maybe we shouldn't have an array for every monster, we instead should have... well no, I'll just do it this way, I guess. I was gonna say we can have a list of like pairs of status and the monster index, but so, oh yeah, you can't, I remember. For some reason Unity doesn't like it if you send an array of enumerations over the network, so I have to leave it as an integer. And so there's no reason to make, we still have this enumeration actually. Yeah, we don't need that anymore. I guess none, unknown, same thing. Okay, so we'll switch battle monsters m.alive. So we end of turn status message life. same thing. Default. Okay, so this we'll just do 0. We don't need that. Okay, so it's basically the same, except now we will sometimes explicitly set unknown. Okay, so now we're finally ready to get back here. So, okay, what should I do first? I guess really we need to make sure that the server is sending like the message that the server attributes to us is correct. So end of turn, status message, my message. It's null. Okay. Let's do it this way. All end of turn. What is it? All receive status message. Okay. Kind of a weird name, but so all messages equals message subscription value. So we just need to loop through there. And we need to find the client ID that matches us. Okay, so let's close everything and just kind of reset. How did I do this? The action finalizer. Or an error checker, actually. I think. Yeah, I had the local connection. Okay. Couldn't remember where I stored that information. Hoping I had stored the class name so I wouldn't have to type it out. I guess I could have just switched the L to uppercase, but whatever. So if all message client IDs I equals the global connection dot client ID, that means that this message is supposed to be ours, so those all messages, statuses. Okay, so if my message is null, then that means, yeah, we have an imposter. Did I spell it right? Is it with an O or an E? Pretty sure. So now we have to check. It's kind of annoying. We're going to status. Where is it? Finalizer. We're going to have to kind of repeat this code, but it's just moving the enumeration back and forth. So, let's actually have a separate class for this. So is it more useful to convert the message to the monster enumeration? I think that might be. Return status message. Oh, I typed void, that's why it's getting confused. Oh wait, I did it backwards. I want this to be the argument, and I want to convert to the to what did I call it? Monster or live status. That's not what I wanted to do, but okay. So this actually doesn't help. I'm gonna have to type or switch this stuff around. Well, this will actually be an integer one, isn't it? That's what comes out of the message. And then we would just return alive status alive. Okay. Oops, I forgot to type return. Okay, there we go. So now that we know that we have some message that the server has applied to us, and then we just need to make sure that it actually matches what we see locally. So we just need to so if my message equals null, I guess another way we could do it is if actually what we should do first is loop through every message and make sure that they're valid. So let's do it that way. So if pull this out, so if message dot monster status equals null or message dot monster status is the wrong length, then we want to throw new corrupted, and I could say this else. What's complaining about here? Oh, it's just because this message is used down here. It's okay. So just thinking if I missed anything. Oh, also, yeah, we should need to check to make sure that these arrays aren't null, I guess. If all messages, client IDs is null, or all messages, statuses equals null, or the arrays have different lengths. That is also corrupted. I guess, oh, this isn't as big of a deal, but probably, well, I was gonna say probably every player should have a message, but if a player does not have a message, it would be watching and throw up an error, so I'm not sure an easy way to know how many players or how many clients are connected. So I'll leave that question for later. And in fact, let's type something here. Should the various anti-cheat methods make sure there is one and only one message for client. That means no more, no less than one. I guess that could be in other things as well. I'm not sure if that's really needed. It'll make things a bit more complicated, but we can always add it down the line. For now, we're just worrying about ourself. Excuse me, ourself. Okay, so now that we've done that, we need to loop through every monster in here and make sure that the status that is sent in the message actually matches up with our knowledge. Oh, come on. Also, yeah, just that should be that. So if battle monsters m.alive does not equal convert my message monster status m, then we throw an error here because yeah, this server has tampered with our message. Okay, so now we know that the message that the server attributed to us is what we actually sent it. So here we need to try and make sure that no players have conflicting information for every monster. How would we do that? Okay, so basically if a monster's live status is unknown, we just need to take any known status that's sent to us. Now that I think about it, well, so what I'm thinking about now is if we do it that way, that if the monster's status is unknown, then there's going to be one player that definitely knows a monster status. Or, yeah, there'll be one player that knows each monster's status because some player will own that monster, and so all the stats will be known to them. Which I guess is okay. So really, should we just always take the owner's word for it? I'm trying to think about the logic here, because I don't really want... Because what I'm trying to avoid here is us having to, like, see if a monster is alive ourselves, because then we'd have to request those certain statistics, which is just one less statistic that can stay hidden. Which I guess if a mod wants to do that, that's fine, but they shouldn't have to, because that kind of takes away some of the fun of the game. So let's see. So we can assume that every monster is alive. And I guess once the owner player says a monster is dead, then we can trust that, because why would they want a monster to be dead? Yeah, they wouldn't really lie about that. I guess the only problem would be if they try to resurrect a monster, then that would be a little problematic, but I guess we can put in some anti-cheat for that. Yeah, now that I think about it, that wouldn't really be that hard to do an anti-cheat for, because monsters would only resurrect at defined times, so if a mod really wanted to, they could make sure that that player used an ability which resurrected the monster that turn, for example. Which, yeah, if they did that, actually the live would be changed before we get to this point. Okay, so I guess the question is, when do we actually want to set a value that we receive here? Okay, while I'm thinking about that, let's go ahead and write some of the code to begin. So I need to loop through every client. Okay, yeah, we can separate this. I don't know. I was gonna say this can probably be another method, but this part is actually needed for both, so. So, like I said, I guess we can just set a monster as dead. Maybe the way to do it instead of just saying unknown. Okay, this is a bit more difficult than I was expecting. Is, I guess, really a monster can just start out as alive. And then we can have like a separate status for resurrected if that ever happens. And then we'll just assume a monster is alive until the owner says that it's dead, and then we'll know it's dead. Well, I guess also a mod could set the alive or dead status itself if we did know those statistics for it. Oh gosh. Okay, so I guess I'll leave it how it is. So let's change this from unknown to assume alive. So yeah, this is how I'll do it. And so this basically means that some mod has set the monster as alive. So we want to do the same here. And so the monster, so it'll just stay at 0 by default. Except actually for netcode, the default to be some none value, because that way we know that if something ever equals this, then that's an error because the message has been uninitialized. I'm surprised I didn't think about that. Okay, so we won't want to default there. Okay, I guess we'll just do that. And then on the error checker, oh, that's the wrong one. I need to have a third one here. So even if we own a monster, this assume alive will, oh, this should throw an error now, so throw new message corrupted. Like, even if we own the monster, the alive status will be this assume alive until some mod has set it to be alive. What's the word? Manually. And really there should be no reason to do that unless the monster has been resurrected. And that way, yeah, because once we know the status, then that would mean that the mods could look up for themselves if a monster is dead or not, which would mean that it would know all the statistics for it. Okay, yeah, so basically, yeah, all this complication is just because I don't want the game to have to request certain statistics for every monster, because yeah, that's just not fun. Because that would mean that there's no way that you could try to hide your health stat from other players, for instance. Okay. So what's the algorithm here? Basically, if a player owns a monster, then we'll just trust them. But then if so basically the monster statuses need to always agree with the owner, I think, is the key takeaway here. Okay, so let's get, this will be a little inefficient, but okay, so owner player. So if, no, not if, for int, it's for each player in battle players, if player team contains monster, then we'll read, oh, we need to index, so yeah, I can't just use for each. Less than battle players count. And the reason we need this is because we'll need to find the owner player for each monster. Well, yeah, I guess we will need to do this. Then we also need to hook up the client IDs to the players, but I think the client index is the same for the player index. Is that true? Yeah, it is. So actually we don't need this code because we already have the player index because it's the same as the client index. Well, I guess I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this. Because like for each of these messages, I guess we should really go for each monster. Okay, so yeah, let's do it the other way around for int m equals 0. M less than battle monsters count. And then what we'll do is, okay, so we will need this, keep going back and forth. Well, because we'll need to get the owner player from here. Alright, then return -1, that shouldn't happen. So int owner player equals player for m. Oh wait, yeah. This is an old code. And then we just need to make sure that everybody's monster status equals up with the owner player. Okay, we'll know if it's assume alive and the owner player says it's dead, then we set the status to dead. So yeah, if the owner Do we always just set our status to the owner player, basically? Okay, well no, because if it's not assume alive, then that means that these values would have been set during the turn. Okay, I decided that already. So, yeah, if our status okay, yeah, so everybody's status needs to be equal except for the owner player. And then if our current status is assume alive and the owner player says it's something different, then we set our value to that. Okay. Okay, so I still need my message. So if my, let's get my status. My status is convert my message. Well, I don't need to do that because my status is what's set in the battle right now. So yeah, it's battle monsters m alive. And then alive status. I don't need to do that, do I? So if yes, algorithms are fundamentally different depending on what my status is right now. So if this is assume alive, that means we trust the owner. And that means that everybody else's status should be assume alive. Okay, so let's make another helper function. Oh no, it's not. Oh, I guess it will work. Okay. Private void check equal. So we'll want all messages. And the monster index, and then we'll have a ignore client, which will be if we need to ignore the player from this. This is actually cool. Let's change this to check agree. So for I2, I less than all messages, client IDs, links. does not equal ignore client. Actually, yeah, we won't use... We'll just skip the first one. Because that's just the one we'll test. We can't do that because if the ignore client is 0... Okay, so let's int test client equals ignore client 0. Oops, why did I do that? Then we'll just set it to 1, otherwise it'll just be the 0. Okay, and all messages, statuses, test client equals all messages, statuses, I. And yeah, if test client and I are the same, and this is by default the same, so it's not that big of a deal. And this should be, if it does not equal, then we'll want to return false. Okay. So here, assume alive will want to check agree all messages m, and we'll ignore the owner. So if check agree, then we'll want to set our status to whatever the owner says, which could still be assume alive. Doesn't really make any difference. Convert. All messages. Owner. Player. Oh no, we can't do it like this. Because yeah, this and like the array is not sorted in that way or indexed, so we actually need to find the owner array index. And what will we do if the owner, if this is null? So, well, basically every player should always send a status message. So if we can't find, like if the owner didn't send a message here, then that means something went wrong. But for now, I'll just assume it sends one because we're running out of time. All messages, client IDs, links. Could maybe do a dictionary for this, but I don't know if it's worth it. Player equals all messages, client IDs, I. Break out of that. Okay, so now statuses. Oh. Dot monsters m. And then we'll want to throw, should be something else because it's like, I don't know, a disagreement. Okay, and then if the status is anything else than assume alive, then everybody should be equal here. So we won't do that, and then basically we'll never set this. Okay. A lot to think in this episode, but I think everything is fine now. Let me just check. That was like the win state. We actually need to set the win state now. Okay, set win state. Actually, that happens in the updater, which I just haven't done yet. Oh, I did update this already, actually. And then, yeah. I guess I need to just test status. Yeah, there's some other bugs or messages, or excuse me, errors. We'll get to that later. Okay, so yeah, all this can go. Okay. So again, let's just look through. First, we make sure that the arrays are all good. Then we find our local connection, our local message. We make sure that it equals what we actually sent. Then for every monster, we find the owner's message. We actually don't need to do this unless it's assume alive. So yeah, we can move this up here. Okay, so actually what we'll do, we don't need my status to be separate either. Okay, so if the current status is assume alive, which basically means we don't know for sure, it's never been set, then we find the owner and we need to make sure that all messages agree except for the owner, which basically means that they all need to have this assume alive. Oh, but what if we're the owner? Okay, I just found something else. Okay, well, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so if they all agree, then we set the value from the owner. And then, so if it's set some value somewhere else, then it's been updated during the turn sometime, so then we just need to make sure that all monsters agree. But the other problem is if we're the owner, then, well, no, does this still work? Well, it's a little different, because if we're the owner, we still do this, but we need to make sure everybody else says that the player is unknown. Or do we? Yeah, well, I guess we just need to make sure that everybody else agrees. We don't really care what the value is. Yeah, so that's okay. So how I should actually change this. So I only need to do this here. So if owner player, how do I do this? If battle players owner player type of. So basically, if it's not local, but I can't actually do that. Private bool is local player. Where is it? I wanted to pull that code I just created. Okay. The reason is because also there's local AIs that we would control. So we return true. Oh, come on. Return false. Okay, so is local player is false and assume alive. So if local player is true, then we would go down here, and at this point, oh, this isn't the same either, actually. So if we're the local player, we need to like give the other players a chance to update theirs, but they should still all disagree with us. Oh, so actually, this is how you do it. If local player then all we just need to do is just make sure it should still be like that. That all the players besides us match, and this is silly, but it doesn't cause any problems. Okay, yes, yeah, this is fine. So if we're a local player, then yeah, both times we just want to make sure everybody except the owner agrees, and that and then we set the life status to match the owner, which is us, so that's already the same. Okay. I guess the only problem that could happen is that we say our monster's alive, but for some reason every other player is cheating and says our monster's dead. But in that case, I mean, there's no way that we could really know if they've just not caught up with us yet or not. Well, actually we could check to make sure that they should all be assume or match with us. Yes, let's... So we did this. So let's... If monster owner is local, make sure all others match our status or are assumed alive. Because that's actually the way it should work. Okay, so yeah, we'll need to come back and change this. But yeah, I'm over time. So let's just do a quick little outro. And I'm sorry we couldn't test this today, but we'll get to it. This turned out to be a bit more involved than I thought, but that's fine. But yeah, everybody, thanks for coming by and watching. I really appreciate it. We'll finish this up tomorrow. And yeah, then we'll move on to something else. I'm not sure what, but if you would like to come and chat in my new Discord with other viewers and game developers, you can check in my channel's description or type !Discord in chat. And same with my YouTube channel, which I'll post old streams and this one in the morning if you want to catch up. And yeah, should be back. Well, this week is a little weird because some of my family's on vacation and I'm not sure if we'll have plans tomorrow, but if not, I'll be here at 8:30 Eastern and I'll be sure to post on Twitter. And I hope to see you there. Thanks again everybody for watching and have a good night. Bye bye.